Welcome to Health and Safety Conversations. Here's your host, Tom Bourne.
Hi, and welcome to Health and Safety Conversations. I'm your host, Tom Bourne, and with me today is Glen Cook, otherwise known as Cookie. Cookie, how are you going?
I'm great, Tom. It's great to be alive on this Thursday, mate.
Yeah, when you get to be my age, every day is great to be. You wake up and see the sunlight, my friend. Glen, you're well known in safety circles around Australia, but for those who haven't somehow heard of you and what you do, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into safety, and what are you currently doing?
Well, I suppose, I've been an electrician for over 30 years. The bulk of my time was on the tools, sort of climbing poles, digging holes and putting power lines back up, in the electrical distribution business. So I ended up being an electrical inspector. So I've done maybe 300 shock investigations as well. And unfortunately, part of that role was investigating fatalities and electrocutions and serious incidents, and basically never thought that I'd be in safety, right? So, I still remember being involved in this sort of incident I'm going to talk about in a sec, about what changed my career. And, the safety team approached me and said, I think you should come and work with us in safety. I'm like, safety? No one likes the safety guy. No, no thanks. I'll be right. I love being an electrician and the technical aspects of that. But I was involved I moved from Cairns to Hervey Bay about 12 years ago. And one of the first incidents I was involved in after I moved was an electrocution, which basically sort of happened across the road from a high school. And it really did resonate with me. And I thought, I could make a difference in this space and talk about what I've done. But yeah, basically a guy was working on an elevated work platform, got too close to 11,000 volt power line, and electricity arcs or jumps, and it basically arced across, went through him, and he was electrocuted instantly. And like I said, when I got on site and seen, the devastation, I really did. It changed my career. And like I said, my business then approached me and said, you want to talk about safety? And that's what I'm doing. So I basically educate. So I try and speak to industry and associations that are, I suppose, at a higher level, to try and change the culture of those industries, coming down to just give people simple hints on how to avoid, accidental power line contacts. And seriously, all these incidents are 100% avoidable. It's not like getting, COVID. You can absolutely avoid it, right?
That wasn't a young apprentice or that you're talking about, is it?
No, it was a painter in Hervey Bay. I think if you're thinking the Apprentice one, that's Bill Martin's son.
Yeah.
I actually was involved in that incident, not really investigating or anything, but I remember the day when I was in Cairns when it happened, and I wasn't too far away from the incident, and the power went off, and I was doing reconnections for people that have got new connections to a house or something. And I just remember, the power's gone off. And then, when I come around the corner, I see the commotion. And I know Bill as well. So Bill's a big fan of my work. G'day to Bill, if he's listening. I just want to stop those things from occurring, right? And seriously, are very avoidable.
Yeah. And Bill actually speaks very honestly and openly from the heart when he talks about the incident and the impact it's led on him and his family around him. So that's
one of the best safety videos I've seen, and it's been around for quite a while. But Bill's been a great advocate for, obviously, safety for obvious reasons, and it is one of the better videos that are out there. If you get to an opportunity to have a look at it, and really does point the fact that I remember one of the quotes from, I think it was a doctor in the video, he basically said, if it gets you, you're dead, or you're severely maimed for life. And it's a line that I use in all my talks as well.
Yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
Yep. It's a brilliant video. I agree with you. Dead or devastated, as I think
that's what it was. Yeah. That was it.
And it's exactly right. And it happens in such a split second. And tell me, if you're working around power lines, what makes people oblivious to them or unaware or failing to look up?
When I first started this role, I was just like, well, why does this keep occurring? And I thought, that like I drive around all day and my family, sort of laugh at me because I'll pull up and start taking photos of power lines and stuff, and they go, what a weirdo, I'm like, but I see them. Like, I'm in the industry, and anyone that's in the industry, we see power lines, and you sort of think, how does this occur? But when I first started the role, I just started asking people. I'm like, well, I need to be an advocate for, builders, plumbers, painters, and farmers, for example, to try and change things from a power line distribution side of it. What can we do to make it more easier to get information, for example? And once I started asking people, they all had a very similar answer. They'd just say, I knew the power line was there. I was talking to a lot of pilots as well at the time, and a bloke called Phil Hurst, who was the Aerial Application Association of Australia CEO, and he said to me, it's inattentional blindness. He goes, it's that one point in time when your mind or your brain doesn't perceive danger, and you miss something. You basically, your eyes and your brain don't work that well together, and your brain can blot things out and you won't see them. I always ask people in my talks, I say, when you drove here this morning, how many power lines did you see? And people start looking at each other going, how does Cookie know I didn't see any power lines today? Right. And power lines are built to be out of your reach or out of your way in your everyday lives. So, you can take the kids to school, go shopping, go on holidays, and you won't impact an overhead power line. But once you start work, you're in a machine, or you're operating a scissor lift, or, you're using ladders, all of a sudden you're using equipment that can reach the power line. That's where people get in trouble, right? So it's 100% a human factor. It's just a human factor that we make mistakes, and our brain is trying to conserve energy. And if your brain's telling you that you don't need to worry about power lines because you can go about your everyday lives without hitting them, it just doesn't click back on when you start working. Because in my experience, 95% of all these incidents that occur with people hitting power lines, 95% of them are workers, right? So it's not people in their everyday lives. The other 5% are people clearing trees in their front yard. So you get themselves in trouble that way. But inattentional blindness, Google it, you'll find it on Wikipedia. It's a real thing. It's just that one point in time when you do not perceive the danger and you just don't see things until it's too late.
Is it just that we're so focused on completing a task that the background sort of literally fades away and we don't see those sort of hazards around us?
That's absolutely another good way to explain it. Is our brain can only hold so many things at once. My wife says I only got one, but anyway, that's her opinion. But look, you can only hold certain number of things or tasks at one time, and something's got to give, right? So there's a great tool out there at the moment for power line safety. It's really been taken up in the eastern states here. So Queensland and New South Wales, there's 7,000 of them up. They're called a rotor marker. So these rotor markers go up on a power line. They're a red and white spinning or rotating marker that sits on the line, and they spin via the breeze, right?
Yep.
And they spin at very low wind speeds as well. So just that movement negates inattentional blindness. So if you think about it, you go back to the caveman days, you're foraging for food, something moves in your peripheral vision,
Yep.
your brain goes, that's interesting, that's important. If you want to eat, you're going to look over here. So basically anything that's moving will grab your attention and you'll look at it. So these spinning markers, there's 7,000 of them up. Okay. I think I mentioned that already. And not one contact in 5 years.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
these markers are absolutely doing their job, and it's because they're moving. Okay, so traditionally we've used a lot of flags. Now flags are better than nothing, but unless it's a really windy day, they're not moving, and they're a plane. So basically, if you're sitting right underneath them, you absolutely won't see them. Whereas the rotor markers that up there spinning, and they just drag your attention and then bring the power line hazard front of mind, because operators don't hit power lines on purpose. It's because they don't see them. But these rotor markers are absolutely a behavior changing tool that's available in Australia. Great Australian invention too, built by a company called Balmoral in Sydney. Great innovation.
Excellent. Oh, speaking of, you talked about no strikes since they've been installed. Is there any statistics available around the number of incidents, people contacting power lines in Australia?
Yeah, look, I haven't got exact numbers, but I've certainly talked to a lot of people within Australia. I guesstimate it to be about 10 a day in Australia alone. I absolutely know that it's 2 to 3 in Queensland because I see the stats, but there is a reporting problem too. Like all the contacts just don't go in there. But if you think about 10 a day, it's quite alarming, right? And then when you actually talk about fatalities, there is 6 to 7 fatalities in Australia and New Zealand every year.
Yeah.
Right? And that obviously doesn't include serious incidents where people have severe burns, amputations, because when you contact an overhead power line, a high voltage in particular, when it arcs, it's 30,000 degrees. All right, I'll say it again, 30,000 in an instant. A cup of coffee, 70 to 80 degrees, you drop it in your lap, it's going to burn you. 30,000, the surface of the sun is 5,000 degrees. So it's 6 times the surface of the sun. So that it does tremendous damage to the human body in an instant, right? Like just a millisecond and you're severely maimed. So, so there's several more of those, and our emergency services have got really good at saving lives when it comes to accidental contact with power lines. Like I've seen so many videos and medical stories and stuff on TV where people have been hurt, and basically burns is the most excruciating pain that we can feel. When 000 call comes through and they hear power lines or shocks or burns, that the emergency chopper heads straight there because they know they've got a limited amount of time to actually get to the person, give them some painkillers, dull that pain, put them in an induced coma, put them in the burns unit, and deal with their injuries. So tremendous amount. It's probably another stat for your audience is, there's a report recently put out by ERAC, which is basically the electrical regulators in Australia and New Zealand. There's, I think it was 143, don't quote me, but it's close to this, 140 electrocutions from 2000 to 2020. 90% of those incidents were accidental contact with power lines. All right. So, the technology is there to protect people in their homes. That's, we have safety switches or residual current devices, we call them in the industry. They will absolutely save you. If there's a faulty appliance in your house or, problem with the wiring in your house, it doesn't solve all problems, obviously, but, I was looking back at a report from 1974 in Queensland, and there was, I can't even remember the number, but it was alarming. I think there was 27 electrocutions from memory, And, there was only 2 from overhead power lines. The rest of them were people doing their own wiring in their own homes. And, there was no safety switches back then. So safety switches absolutely save lives is one thing I always talk about. Like, I'm passionate about power line safety, but also electrical safety. Like, if you don't have safety switches in your home, you need to call an electrician and get them to put some in. For $300, you can absolutely save someone's life. But yeah, amazing stat, mate. Like 90% in the last, basic 22 years. It wouldn't have changed in the last 2 years. The protections just aren't there to protect human life. The protection there on high voltage power lines is there to protect the power line network from basically burning to the ground when someone contacts it. So, or a machinery contacts it. So,
yeah. Spent most of my adult life in Brisbane, in and around Brisbane, and to me, the amount of high voltage power lines that are still visible or still around where people can come to is very small. Come over to Perth, they're everywhere. They're literally everywhere, which is it's just an interesting thing. Do you know of, or did you have any knowledge of what happened to Jason Garrels?
Basically, just from the video and stuff that I've watched over the years, and look at a real tragic story as well. Once again, lack of safety switches, particularly on a construction site like that one in Claremont. It's not a nice story, obviously.
No, it's not. It's not. All right. Some good news. You're awarded the title of Safety Professional of the Year earlier this year.
It was actually in 2020, mate. And
2020.
Trust me, 2020 was not the year to win anything.
Did you ever think that was going to happen?
Absolutely not, mate. Like I said at the start, like I never thought I'd be in safety to begin with. And one of the first things I thought about was, how am I going to get out of these presentations? Because I didn't know that I could public speak, but people tell me I do a good job. And look, I just listened to people and thought I can actually help here. What can I do to assist people? Like I said, I'm an advocate for lots of different industries. Like, I've learned so much about like agricultural industries, for example, cotton, grains, and cane, and more about the transport industry and more about the construction industry, even though I was sort of in it as an electrician. But I've learned more what people are up against when they're working near power lines. And, as part of my talks, I very much don't talk about the legislation. I will touch on it closely and say, look, there's the 3-meter exclusion zone and you should use safety observers. But I very much talk about the human factors and the why, right? So we do all this training and all we do is preach to people, and you need to explain to people why it is they need to understand, and that inattentional blindness comes into it. And then, look, the main reason I won that award is basically myself and a couple of others within our business came up with the Look Up and Live app. But I do all these talks, and I still remember having a chat with my boss, Aaron Smith, one day when we were together having a beer, because we never see each other. He's sort of in Townsville, I'm in Harvey Bay, and you never get to see each other. And I said, and this is when apps started coming in, right? And I said, we really need another way to help people plan their work, because all the incidents that I've seen is a distinct lack of planning. So if you think about before you dig, right? I'll ask you a question, Tom. What do you think gets hit more, underground power lines or overhead? So the ones that we can't see or the ones that we can see?
The ones that we can't see, I'd suggest.
It's the complete opposite, mate.
Really?
So one underground power line hit to 25 in Queensland alone, right?
That's amazing.
So it's the stuff that we can see because of the human factors. So, before you dig is the start of a very simple plan, right? Yep. So you turn up on site or someone's done a before you dig before, and you're looking at a plan. Just by looking at that plan, you reduce the risk of hitting a power line or a gas line or a Telstra line, right? Or a communications line. With overhead, we rely on the operators to do a risk assessment, and that's a tick box saying power lines, tick. And then, not every time you're going to see that line, and that's when the incidents occur. So I needed something in my talks to sort of help people walk away and go, I've got a tool to help me now. So I work on a theory called protection motivation theory. Now, basically, it's a theory out of the 70s, and it works very good for safety. So to get people to change their safety behavior, you need to instill fear. You need to instill feelings of self-worth to get home to your family, right? Then you need a very easy way to change your safety behavior. And that's where I come up with the Look Up and Live app. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, just go to lookupandlive.com or download it from the app stores. It maps all the power lines. So basically a Google Maps, put a line on a piece of paper, then you can type in your address and you can see what's there before you actually get there. So it just allows people to plan. So, sort of when I get near the end of my talk, I sort of said, I'll explain to you all the dangers around electricity and easy ways to negate it and practical ways to negate hitting it, the use of radar markers and such. But you really need to plan, and we need to start planning better from the design stage or even the tender stage. So if you think about construction sites, I built it as a planning tool, essentially, but it can be used at any stage, right? If we can, say for roadworks, for example, when they're tendering for it, they should be going, wow, there's all these power lines here. If we win this tender, we really need to be talking to the power line company to find out how quickly we could get them removed, because basically all the overhead power lines should be removed on those sites before the first construction donger is dropped on site. So if we can eliminate it that way, we'll stop a lot of incidents from occurring, right? So that's where I come up with that Look Up and Live app. And I suppose that's where I think people started noticing myself, right? And what I was doing, and when I started, doing these things on my talks and being able to promote a free tool. And I tell you what, man, it is so hard to sell something that's free. It's not funny. It's just everyone just sort of goes, "Oh, what's the catch?" There's no catch, right?
Yeah.
Currently it was that popular. We've now added in basically all of New South Wales, all of Queensland, and South Australia are now all part of the Look Up and Live app. Horizon Power in Western Australia have now signed up. The data's close to being made available. We're just working through that at the moment. But all power line distributors have been invited to join the app, and it costs nothing. It's just a simple data share agreement. It's just a way for people to put a plan in place. And us humans we love images, right? So
Yeah.
the beauty of the Look Up and Live app is when you're looking at your work site, even though there might be an image that's 3 years old, it's enough for you to recognize. And when you turn up on site, you may have seen the Look Up and Live plan like a day before, a week before, 2 months before. But when you turn up on site, your brain goes, "Oh, I've seen this before," right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it goes power. You see the power line, so you dramatically reduce the risk of hitting power lines. So when we first introduced it into Queensland, we reduced contacts in the agricultural industry by 50%.
Yeah.
But is amazing. It took a couple of years. Things are sort of plateauing a little bit now, but we're also recording these incidents a lot better as well. So, people in my business have really understood the Look Up and Live app and the Look Up and Live tool, and understand that we need to know about every single incident. So we're getting more reports now. So unfortunately, our stats are looking a little bit worse for wear, but I absolutely know I'm seeing less fatalities. I'm seeing less serious incidents, to be honest. So it is good to see such a simple tool actually working.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you got Horizon. Horizon over here look after most of rural Western Australia, and I'd suggest mining and agriculture would be some of the main areas you have strikes, perhaps. Would that be right?
Just looking at the stats, I know the stats well in Queensland, obviously, but construction's a big one.
Yep.
Agriculture is still around probably one a week, but where we see the fatalities are a lot in the agricultural sector, because
Yep.
workers work alone.
Mm.
There is no safety observers in place. You know, and what happens is people panic. So, for example, someone folds out a spray rig and it contacts an overhead power line. The people panic and try and exit the vehicle, and
Yep.
that's where we can find them electrocuted. Because one of the biggest things I talk about, going back to the caveman days again, right? It's when something like that happens, it's fight or flight. If you understand how electricity works, you can actually save your life, because you got to stop yourself from running that flight response, right?
Mm.
So one of the biggest things that I push in my talks is doing basically just basic electrical theory. So I say to people, knowledge is the best defense when it comes to power line safety. So if you understand how electricity works in its basic form, you can understand the safest place to be. Obviously, the safest place to be is nowhere near the power line and not hitting it. But if it does occur, what happens next, right? So the way I explain it to people is, if you imagine, a 12-volt system in your car, you get a positive terminal, negative terminal. Electricity wants to travel in a complete circuit in the quickest, the easiest way that it can. Normally that's through metal or all that circuit wiring, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's electricity's ultimate game, is to get back to its power source in the quickest and easiest way that it can. If electricity can complete the circuit, it's really happy. If electricity can't complete the circuit, it gets really angry, right? High voltage in particular, that's where we get the arcing. So it's basically ramping up to complete the circuit, and that's where the arcing occurs. So, and electricity too will travel through the earth to try and get back to its power source. So the way I explain is, if you imagine a body of water and drop a rock in the middle, ripples form. The ripples are higher or stronger where the rocks hit, and it dissipates as it goes to the edge of the water. If you think of those ripples as a different voltage, so where the rocks hit, say it's 11,000 volts, first ripple 10, 9, 8, and so on. So if you're standing next to a power line that's, say a power line gets hit by a tip truck, for example, and it comes down and falls onto the ground, the electricity will go through the earth like those ripples. And if you're standing on the 9,000 volt ripple, on the 8,000 volt ripple, ask yourself, what's a better conductor of electricity, the earth or a human? A human is a better conductor of electricity. So the theory of electricity says it will go through the human, right? So that's called step potential. Likewise, if you are in that truck, the tip truck that hit, and the wire's still on the truck, if you try and exit the vehicle and touch the ground at the same time, you get what's called the touch potential, which would be 11,000 volts. Mm-hmm. So because you're a better conductor of electricity, if you complete a circuit, basically, if you hop out of the truck and touch the ground at the same time, you complete a circuit, you're like a switch, right? Yeah. So I always ask people straight away, I said, so where's the safest place to be? And it's in the truck, because the truck is like a Faraday's cage.
Yeah.
You got to ask yourself, what's a better conductor, human or metal? And the answer is metal. Metal is a great conductor of electricity. So you're like a bird on a wire as long as you stay in that machine. So the safety message for myself is stay, cool, wait. You stay in the machine, you call 000, and you wait. And the reason why I'm trying to get more distributors to, not just in Australia, but all over the world, to have a consistent message when it comes to what happens when you hit power lines. Because in the safety spot, we're really good at writing procedures, right? We go, we've had a fatality. We're all right, what's the procedure? You got to stop teaching people the procedure and teach them the theory. Like if people understand the theory of it, they don't need to know the procedure. Because I've been doing this for 12 years, like I said, and I'll be in a pub somewhere in rural Queensland or wherever. I've even been to the US a few years back to talk about this, and when they see my look up and live badge or the stuff that I'm wearing, they go, what do you do? And you say, I'm in power line safety. And then they start telling you, oh yeah, I know how to escape, and I've done this training. I've still never met anyone that got the procedure right. And everyone forgets the most important step, to stay, right? Like I've seen so many fatalities where people have exited and they'd still be here today if they just stayed in the machine, right? Yeah. So and motor vehicle accidents, for instance. If this is, people listening to this podcast, if you've never heard of this before, please share it with your friends and family, because, I do these talks and I'll stand up for, a group of 50 grown men and women. And I said, who here has learned something today? And you got grown men putting up their arms saying, yeah, I didn't know about this, right? So, motor vehicle accidents, if you hit a power pole or, all of a sudden the power line's falling down and a storm falls on your car, the safest place to be is in the vehicle. Just don't get out. Just wait, Obviously, if the vehicle's on fire, you've got things to do, but that's the step and touch potential. You got to risk the electricity to get out now, but, just jump clear. Don't touch the door. Don't try and close the door. You'll want to close the door, but you got to stop yourself. You just jump clear with your feet together and you just hop away. It doesn't need to be huge hops, just keeping your feet together, hop away and get at least 10 meters away, and then you'll be safe. And don't go back for your phone or your wallet.
Yeah.
People laugh. It's happened. Like, people have got out and then they go, I want to go back, right? And you don't know whether the power's on or off, right? So, it's just something that's promoted differently a lot. North America, there's a lot of videos and stuff, and they always sort of promote getting out of the vehicle, whereas I would prefer to stay in the vehicle every single time. Like, you got more chance of winning Powerball tonight, mate, than actually hitting a power line and having the vehicle burn to the ground and have to escape. The most important message is to stay.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've actually learned something there too, because I've been trying to do the whole, jump, etc., and it's like it's almost it's against human nature to stay where you're in the area of perceived danger, but it's actually
well, that's like I said, knowledge is the best defense, right? So understanding that electricity is invisible, it's impossible to tell whether it's on or off. So, unless there's another danger, you absolutely stay where you are. And it takes a bit to do that. If I was in that situation, I'd want to get out too, right? But you're just going to go, nah, no way, I can't get out. And we make lots of stickers and stuff to go in vehicles and sort of designed to go on the visor of a vehicle, so you're not looking at them all the time. And obviously on top of the sticker, the most important message comes up as stay cool, wait. And then, if absolutely necessary, because the vehicle's on fire, the escape procedure, because if it does happen, it's not like the movies. It's not going to explode there and then. You're actually going to have minutes, lots of maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes before you have to get out, right? So you can study up on it and go, how am I going to be able to do this safely? Have I got to jump from a height, or, is the door going to close in on me if I jump out? Because if you touch the vehicle on the ground, it's got you. So, yeah.
Well, you've been raising community awareness for over a decade now. Have you seen any change in the attitudes of industry or community attitudes since you started?
Oh, look, I think I have made a difference, to be honest. And particularly with other distributors and other people across the world, really, particularly in North America and the UK. I've made a really good network of people that have reached out to me and asked me for my advice. And I think there's not really anyone that's doing what I'm doing, to be honest, and sort of put themselves in the shoes of, these industries. Whereas I think it's easy for powerline companies to just sort of go, well, it's not our fault. But what is it that we can do to assist industries and give people information? I must say, one thing that I have noticed probably in the last 5 years or so, I did a bit of a trip up to Cairns and Far North Queensland and drove back down again. I went through a lot of roadworks, and there was a lot of the look up and live men, yellow core flute that's got look up and live, and he's pointing up in the air. And I was sort of thinking to myself, man, I remember doing this trip, probably 20 years ago, and there's lots of roadworks then, and you never used to see anything. So there's a lot more controls out there. Not that I advocate for signs, to be honest. I've seen so many incidents where, people are still contacted and there's a look up a live man there. There's flags. There's like, seriously, you need the rotor markers. The rotor markers make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I'd be remiss in not mentioning there actually is a very good engineering control out there, and it's actually from WA, mate.
Okay.
So, yeah, a company in WA have made this product called Go Up Safely, and they're from Protective Engineering. This is the only product in the world that I'm aware of that will actually stop the machine from operating if it gets too close to a power line. So it's basically a proximity
Sensor.
Yep. But it talks to the machine. It's not just an alarm,
Yep.
right? Go Up Safely. Just Google Go Up Safely. You will absolutely find it. Very easy to retrofit. It's wireless. Basically magnets onto, say it was an excavator, for example, you could put two on it. You put one on the knuckle and one on the bucket. Then it talks wirelessly back to the cab or the machine. And then you've got that interface there. And if it gets too close, it will stop the machine. It's a fail safe, right? Yeah. It's not there to negate the use of a spotter or having a proper plan. But as I've seen, these incidents occur when there's no plan in place. No one's really thought about it, or they've missed the power line stuff. They don't have a spotter in place. So this can save lives. So yeah, any listeners out there with large machinery such as, agriculture machinery or excavators or tip trucks and anything of the like, cranes, for example, you need to start looking at this product and don't just put alarms. Alarms don't work. I've got so many examples where alarms are touched and, tissues and silicon and stuff put into the little horns, and just because they hate the things going off all day. And we just get used to it, right? I was talking, I don't like signs because we get sign blind, right?
That's true.
It's the same when I always ask people, have you got a speeding ticket before? And people always go, yeah. And I said, yeah. I'll ask you, do signs work? And people go, no, they don't. I said, but what about the school signs, like the 40, the ones that are flashing, right? I don't know if you got them there in Western Australia. We've got a lot of them here in Queensland. So when you come to a school zone, it's not just about revenue raising and slowing you down. It's actually about saving lives. So main roads, they put up flashing signs which work like a rotor marker, for example, and bring the speed front of mind so we don't hurt kids or run over kids, right? So absolutely, it's a fail safe for the machines, and it's not that expensive. For example, you could have a system put on retrofitted onto a machine for as low as $3,000. So it's about saving lives. And a machine could be $500,000. If it hits a power line, it's pretty much destroyed. All the hydraulics are gone, the electrics are gone. So it's a protection for the machine and the operator and anyone around them. So a life-saving tool there. I'd really recommend people have a look at it.
No, that's great. That's great. No, that's really good.
It'll do me out of a job one day, mate. Let's hope.
Oh, mate. It's a funny thing that if you are ultimately successful, you become redundant. But
fine by me, mate.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you'd be quite happy with that. All right. Couple of little things. You deliver these talks all over Queensland. Do you go anywhere else?
Well, I've done a lot of late, especially since I suppose it was prior to COVID too, but I've noticed this year. So I've done a lot of national conferences. So I'm more than happy to talk at the national level, and I usually I'll reach out to other distributors in those states as well. So just to say I'm coming into their patch and this is what I'm going to be talking about. But like I said, it's fairly easy to talk about the why without sort of going into each state's different legislation. But it is fairly similar. Like basically 3 meters and the use of a spotter is pretty much worldwide. But yeah, look, have been doing that like I said, I've been sort of recognized internationally as well. So just recently I was the quarter, I think it is, in a US magazine called Damage Prevention Professional. So that was a complete surprise, to be honest. I was actually Googling an article that I'd sort of co-written with my boss, and the latest magazine was out. I said, "Oh, I'll just have a look at it and see what's in there this month." Then I sent a picture of myself, and I'm like, "What's this?" I know that bloke. And then so that was quite a surprise, and it's great to get internationally recognised, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, I have put a lot of effort into what I've been doing, and I'm quite passionate about it. So, like we mentioned earlier, I'd never thought I'd be in safety because, when I first started, mate, we didn't even use gloves back in the day. I used to climb
Yeah.
poles and work bare hand, and the safety has certainly been on a bit of a journey over the years, and I'm glad I got into it now. I do love my job. Don't tell too many people, they might want to
Nah.
change something.
All right. A personal question. Have you ever received a good solid electric shock? You're sparky, so I'm guessing it's
Yeah.
yes.
It's been quite a number of years though, mate. I certainly have. But I worked as obviously climbing poles when I was younger, and I worked in a place called Mossman in far north Queensland, quite tropical.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we never used to have gloves or anything. Lucky to have a PVC dipped cotton glove we used to wear on one hand. That was back in the early 90s, right? And I just remember climbing one pole one day, and everything I was touching was just giving me a tingle, and quickly climb back down the pole, mate. It's like, I'm not doing that one. No, thanks.
Yeah.
It was just because it was tropical, man. It was wet, and there was obviously an issue, and everything I was touching, I was getting a bit of a tingle. But
All right.
it hurts, man. It really does hurt, and I think there's a lot of younger guys that are coming through now. Even when I was a supervisor, I had younger guys coming through, and they hadn't received an electric shock. And I think there's a little bit of complacency then, not realizing how much power is there, and if it gets you in the wrong way, for example, working between two live power lines, if you get hooked up on it, you won't be able to let go. And even working near large transformers, like I've had to investigate a few serious incidents where a spanner's been dropped across a couple of bus bars. And for those guys out there, bus bar is basically two very large pieces of copper, and 30,000 degrees running through those things, and 50,000 amps, the copper bus bar just explodes. So not understanding that there's so much power and potential for explosion working on something like that, and we've seen an increase in arc flash incidents across Australia and New Zealand. I know a lot of the ones in Queensland, but I do a bit of work with the electrical safety office here in Queensland. I sit on a committee for them as well, and there has been an increase in arc flash incidents where people can get severely burned working on electrical infrastructure.
Yeah. And for anyone who gets even a mere 240 volt shock, what's your advice?
I'll go straight to hospital. Make sure you report it, number one. Getting an arc a tingle or a shock means there's something wrong.
Yep.
Do not muck around with it. Report it immediately. Don't get someone else to test it out. Which you laugh, Tom, but man.
Oh no, I know that's exactly what would happen.
If people go, no, surely, and then they touch it, and then someone else gets a shock. I'm like, just don't touch anything metal in the house. Report it to your electrical distributor, number one, or you can get an electrical contractor to come and have a look at it. Go and get yourself checked out in hospital, because it can basically it can stuff up your hydraulics, right? So it can send your heart into fibrillation, so your heart will just start pumping too quick, and it won't pump the blood through your body properly. So yeah, any small shock can do you damage, right? So make sure you go and get yourself checked out. They'll put you on ECG and make sure everything's still working properly. Yeah, you get it looked at straight away. And like I said, safety switches can save your life, so make sure you get them going.
Absolutely. All right, Cookie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I look forward to speaking to you again soon. But for now, goodbye.
All right, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me, mate.
Oh, excellent.
Thanks for listening to Health and Safety Conversations with Tom Bourne. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your week.